Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. A little bit late to start, and this time, sadly, we cannot blame Tom. I want to blame Tom, but we can't blame Tom.
I mean, we can
As
blame
we,
Tom. It's possible.
yeah, well, sure. In fact, let's just go ahead and blame Tom. But we don't have Tom this week. In fact, it's my old buddy Paul Kuehnert, of formerly, he and I did a little excellent hobby adventure. Paul was away for a little while, but he's back, and this is going to be our first hobby focused Warhammer Weekly. And I thought it's got to be Paul. What's going on, Paul?
Not much. Back from a little hiatus. You know, had some life stuff going on. Had some hobby switching going on. But I'm back. I was like, you know what I really want to do? I want to paint. You know what I want to do more than paint? I want to hang out with Vince. That's what I want to do.
Right. And so we thought, let's have a show where we hang out and talk about painting. And so tonight's show is going to be all about the hobby. Now, Paul has put up some hobby videos recently. See, Paul, I'm still subbed to your channel, buddy. I didn't let that go. So as soon as your new videos hit, I was like, oh, Paul's back. He's back in the mix.
It's happening.
I was excited. That's right. Paul and I did a series sometime, almost 2 years ago now, probably, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, where we would set ourselves a hobby challenge each week and then try to meet that and evaluate our results, which I thought was actually really good. It made me try a bunch of new things.
I loved it. It's great.
Yeah, so maybe Paul, now that you're back in the hobby, maybe we'll see about resurrecting something like that.
Hey, man, I would love to. It's very enjoyable times.
Absolutely. So I saw you painting up some Primaris and stuff like that. We're going to talk about that in hobby time, I'm sure, what exactly is on your table. But
God, I don't want to admit it, but I certainly am.
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Let's start out with some news. Without Tom, how will we ever do the news? I guess I'll just have to do it for him. Tom, by the way, the reason he's not here, he was still on vacation. He was originally supposed to be here. His flight got delayed, and so that is actually out of his control. I won't blame him for that.
I hear internets have airports, though, or airports have internets.
Well, it's true, but now he's like actually in the car with all of his kids driving back to his house because he can't actually fly into his airport. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that he's like, well, if you want me to dial in on my phone, I will. And I was like, yeah, 4 screaming kids in the car. I'm totally okay. We'll get by this week. It's fine. Paul and I have done this before. We can do it again.
A little fill in for Tom.
Yes, indeed. All right, so let's begin, as we often do on these Wednesdays, with the rumor engine. Now, have you seen the rumor engine picture yet, Paul?
Which rumor engine picture?
This
I am not linked into all my rumor engines like I used to be.
All right, well, here we go. We're gonna share it up here. Okay. Badoom. Here is our newest rumor engine picture. Can you see that okay?
Oh man. That looks pretty cool.
Indeed. Now, what do you think this is, Paul? This is where we play the game of what do you think it is?
Oh man, see, for me, I'm not all up on the Age of Sigmar, but it kind of reminds me. So they've been doing a lot of these like signpost things. So that like all I remember is the Sigmarine guys, you know, that Lictor, the
Lord
captain guy.
Yep.
Yeah, Lord Reliquor. He had something kind of like this looking thing. It also just reminds me of sort of like Death Faction, right? It's got, you know, some ghouls hanging out around it, some skeletons, maybe like a lich or something. I don't know. Be pretty cool.
Yeah, I like this. This is a really interesting one to me. I've seen, like, what I love about this one is it could be so many things. So let me throw some concepts at you, okay? All right.
All right, let's see what you got.
Okay, so it's reminiscent of several things. There is a dreadnought that has some skull fronts that look kind of like this.
Okay.
Which, you know, dreadnoughts are often adorned with this sort of like religious iconography of bones and stuff because, you know, their dreadnoughts are like not living people piloting them around. You've got the Lord Relictor that you mentioned. I agree. He's got the dead skeleton in the banner, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have, do you remember the old, like, there was like a Bretonian little box that opened up that was like their banner on their infantry? They had like a little banner pull like that.
Yeah.
And so some people have said, well, maybe it's a free people's thing. Okay. I don't, you know, it's like, I don't see a Free People's release as being highly probable, but
That's what I was sort of going to ask. Like, I mean, it doesn't seem like if they've been supporting Free People's really, or.
I mean, it's there. It's in all the books. It's a thing. They show up. It's gets played on the Twitch and stuff like that. I don't know. Who knows? You can't put anything past GW at this point. But let me tell you what I think it is. All right. Did you ever see do you know what the Imagifier is? From the Sisters of Battle?
No, I have not.
The Imagifier is a sort of Sisters of Battle character. In fact, we're just going to do this. Sisters of, I should have had this up. Imagine that one. Here you go. This is what she looks like. And she has this little stick. There you go. Look at that.
Oh, so I'm buying into what you're selling here, Vince.
Okay,
I'm on board with you on this one.
Yes. So the Imagifier has this little box that has bones in it and a skull. Like, that's a pretty accurate version of what that thing is.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at this point, I don't know if you're talking about the old model or what you just showed me.
Exactly.
And that's how close it is.
I'm just saying.
And I think, personally, out of all the situations you just described, in GW's current mode, Sisters of Battle is the most likely thing you're going to get.
Yeah, I know people are poo-pooing me. I can hear them across the internet. I can hear their resonance from the future. I can see it in the comments. I choose to believe. So my call, I'm putting the flag in the sand right here. Boom. This is the first spoiler image of the new Plastic Sisters of Battle. I'm planting the flag. That's what it is. It's too close to the Imagifier. There you go.
And I mean, I'm here with you on this one. I want to see it. I want to see some Sisters of Battle. Like, it's a faction that I think there's some diehard fans of, and I would be all over it. Seems like it'd be a fun faction.
They would sell like gangbusters. Gangbusters, I tell you. But there we are.
They'd be on everyone's shelves. No one wouldn't have them.
Look, it is a well-known, I mean, I alone could account for a major part of the sales of the line. I could make it almost worth it, okay? I'm just saying.
All of the models to one guy.
All of the models in the state of Ohio were purchased by one person. That was really weird. That seems unlikely.
He literally came to the store with a semi-truck. We don't know why.
Just backed it up and said, keep loading. Just all of it. So there you go. I'm just saying one more time. Ready? Come on. It's too alike. Anyways, there you go. That's my guess. I'm saying Plastic Sisters of Battle confirmed. You heard it here first.
Internet, let's just let Vince have it. Let's just let him have this one. It's Sisters of Battle. It's fine.
There you go. All right. Good. I'm glad. I win. Yay.
Yay. Victory.
I do think the people who were hoping for Death Faction, I'm like, I don't see it, man. It looks too clean and too it does look sort of sacred relic-y, not like, Death doesn't tend to fetishize its own corpses that much.
I mean, the only thing I could see it being in that realm is sort of like another one of the Garden of Moor sceneries kits or something, where it's just like a signpost or something like that.
Yeah.
In one of those kits.
Yeah, to me, if it's not the thing I'm talking about, it is that exactly. It's like an objective or a terrain piece or something like that. Yeah. Yep. I would buy that. It would be sad, but there you go. Okay. So, let's see. Next up, obviously, we've got the new Path to Glory book and the new Getting Started boxes coming out this weekend, and they are quite sexy. Good deals all around. I'm definitely picking up one of the Slanesh boxes because it's a great deal. It's got the big Exalted Chariot in it, 5 Seekers, and 10 Daemonettes. I'm all about that. That's a double dip right there for me. That's a double dip.
So I'm gonna let people just throw it out for someone who's been gone for a little while. Y'all need to soak up these boxes if you don't know about it. These deals didn't used to happen. It used to be let's keep these models in the box and charge you retail, even though they're together, right?
Yes.
All those deals, like you just said, good deals. Like you know, it's pretty tempting to look at those. You're like, you're pretty much getting like a box of models for free in those deals.
Yeah, and that's assuming you bought it retail. But of course, now because those are all boxed, you can also generally get them from a wide number of places at 15% off in addition.
Absolutely.
So you're getting it even cheaper, right? You know, in the end, those things clock in around $74 or something like that, you know, in that area, $77, $74, $78, or sorry, $73, $74. So at that point, it's quite a deal. Yes. And I agree. The old bundles, the old world was, we save you the extra clicks it took to add all these to your cart. That's the only savings you're getting.
I'm gonna help you out here. I'm just gonna take all the things you were gonna click and put them together for you.
Yes. Now you only have to click once. Are we not benevolent? Yes. The world has changed. The world has changed. Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, the Slaanesh one's pretty great. Like I said, for me, it's playing double duty because I've been very much enjoying playing my Slaanesh demons in 40K, but I've also been looking to sort of expand my AOS force, and I don't have an Exalted Chariot. And Seekers are the bomb in 40K. I love them because they shred through Marines like it's like they're not there, which I enjoy greatly. Anything that kills Marines, I support 100%. Exactly. There you go. We have all normal watchers of this show will know my feelings on Space Marines. Okay. So, what else? Oh, the Adepticon housing block opened up today, people. You can go to the Adepticon page. I'll throw the link down below. So because it's actually, you can't like go to the hotel directly and book it. You have to go through the Adepticon block page to reserve your room. And what I'll say is, wisely this year, you have to pay up front 1 day of your stay. I actually quite enjoy that because it puts some kind of barrier of entry on it. It sucks to have to pay money 8 months in advance, but the problem if they don't do that is that everyone just books up, and then right before the show, you know, a bunch of people cancel because there was no cost to doing so, right? They can just book because who cares if they might go or not, and then they just cancel, and it just creates a big mess where people who don't go don't get it. So, Paul, here's my question: you going to make the trip this next year?
I was just gonna have you sales pitch me, man. I've never been to Adepticon. What do we got to look forward to here?
All right, so let's talk about why you should be at Adepticon next year, Paul. Do you like any kind of war game? Do you enjoy any of them?
I hate most things. Yeah.
Sure. I understand that. That's number one. So if you hate most things, you'll have a lot of different games to hate on. Think about what an advantage that will be. Normally, you'd have to go to lots of different stores, lots of different events to hate on all the different types of games. Now you can hate on them all in one place.
You're telling me everything I dislike is in one spot.
That is correct. That is exactly what I'm telling you. You're playing Infinity. You're playing Malifaux. You're playing Ninth Age. You're playing 40K. You're playing Age of Sigmar. You're playing a whole bunch of other stuff, like many others that I'm not mentioning. Saga and Wreck Age, and I'm trying to think of other ones I see. There's so many more. I forgot a bunch of them. Doesn't matter. Okay. They have big tournaments all weekend for all of that. So there's number one. Number two, it's probably the best supported convention as far as like just actual vendors and getting wargaming stuff. It's 100% wargaming focused. It's about 3,500 to 4,000 people probably is what I expect we'll see in 2018. It's a really nice hotel/convention center. It's in Schaumburg, Chicago. It's not that far from O'Hare. If you fly into O'Hare, for example, it's, you know.
So cheap flights too, right? O'Hare's not that hard to get to.
No, I mean, most people you can get to O'Hare on a lot of different airlines. Obviously, it's a big Southwest hub. You can get there like that. So there's a lot of different airlines that do fly in there. Of course, it is the home of the Crystal Brush, you know, the actual the final Crystal Brush competition. There's all the qualifiers throughout the year, and then the final prize is there, where artists come from around the world to compete in what is theoretically the banner miniature painting competition in the United States, with a $10,000 grand prize, which no American has won for a long time, but that's okay. At this point, I feel. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're the Americans against like the Russians in hockey, and we're just waiting for that like miracle year.
It's like Olympic. Like Olympic weightlifting. The American goes, and that Chechnyan guy goes, and you're like, oh fuck, what just happened?
Exactly. Yes. So you got that, which is a fantastic miniature painting competition, and I of course enter that every year. And let's see, what else have we got? There's a huge amount of GW support. They were all there last year. They will all be there again next year. They've already said they'll be there. So you get all of the GW people and leadership coming and hanging out and playing games, playing in the tournaments. If you've ever wanted to take them on directly, they just are hanging out, talking with people. It's, oh my God, hold on, hold the phone, full stop, pause. Paul Wagner, buddy, just dropped a bomb in the comments. He said, "Miracle on Ice, meet the Miracle on Dice." I love it.
Oh.
That is mic drop, buddy. That is a winner.
That's the show for tonight. So
thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. I don't think we're going to be able to beat that. That is a comment winner for the night. So yes, in addition to that, you know, you get to see new things, all new games that are coming out. It really is great. It is, and it's all wargaming. So, you know, I'm going to go to Gen Con in less than a month, which is 70,000 people. That's a lot bigger, but there's more wargamers at Adepticon than there is at Gen Con. That's what I would say. And everybody's going to be there, Paul. You don't want to be left out of everybody, do you?
That would make me a sad, lonely person.
It would. Don't be a sad, lonely person. So anyways, you should think about it. And if you want to come to Adepticon, the housing block is open, and I'll throw the link down below. There you go. Book your room now.
That was a good sale pitch.
Hey, it is super a lot of fun. I've been there several years in a row now, and I really, really, really do enjoy it. It is the most stressful weekend I participate in all year. I never really actually enjoy it, but I look forward to it a lot.
So real quick, I have to ask because I'll forget. How do you qualify to go to the Crystal Brush? You said there was qualifiers previously, so is it making the cut continuously? Do you just kind of?
No, anyone can enter at Crystal Brush. If you take a best in show at one of the qualifiers, you get your travel to the event covered for free. Okay. So for example, if you can barely see him, but you see that Lord of Change hiding right there?
Mm-hmm.
You can barely see him, but he won Best in Show at a Crystal Brush qualifier this year. So I have my trip to Chicago, the couple hour drive if I wanted covered for free. So there you go.
What?
Yeah.
There's guys, I'm going to hang out with a famous person.
So, I mean, look, any success I've had in the miniature painting world is clearly because of you. You challenged me, Paul, because of our excellent adventure we took together. That's it. I credit you completely.
I mean, I don't know who else you would credit.
Exactly.
It's not like hard work and effort got you anywhere.
No, zero of that.
That's stupid.
No, exactly. So, but yes, it is super fun. Anybody can throw something in the case. At any time. There's no cost to it. You just have to have a badge, like to Adepticon. That's it. So, and it is a really tough competition. All the European painters are there, but there are various categories, and they do a top 3 in each category. So, or at least that's what they have done classically. So,
sounds like a ton of fun to me.
It's very, and then so what happens is on Saturday they do a first cut. Mm-hmm. Like the judges do a first cut, and then that all goes up for internet voting. And so 50% of the final position is determined by judge vote, and 50% is determined by internet vote. Making that weekend an extremely stressful weekend because I had like last year, for example, I had 3 pieces make the cut. So they were in for potential final prizing, and I didn't have any take the top 3. So, but that whole like Saturday to Sunday, that is literally my day. I'm just like sitting there thinking about that, walking past the case, trying to figure out if I've got a chance, that kind of thing. So but it's fun. I love it. That's why you go. You go for that. Everybody else goes to compete in tournaments. I don't find any enjoy. I play wargaming tournaments for pure fun. When I want to compete, I paint. That's my take on it. Which is why we're talking about hobby tonight.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. I mean, it sounds like I'm gonna have to step up a little game and get a little entry going on in there.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Yeah. All right. All right.
There we go. All right. Good. We're selling you. And look, we'll talk. We'll talk. All right. So
I do have to add real quick on the in the context of the show. Also, Las Vegas Open, I believe, is taking reservations pretty soon. So here on the West Coast, that's one of the bigger hobby events, especially for 40K. I believe they have painting, and I believe they've done a lot of side events for, War Machine, and I believe they probably will be running a 9th Age and probably an Age of Sigmar this year. Usually they're a little bit smaller side events, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the LVO dates, everything got solidified today, and I'm not sure if the hotel block when it's going to open up. But yes, LVO obviously has the Draconis Awards as their painting competition, which is also a very notable painting competition. It's in January this year. So
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually rather nice because the problem with it previously was it was usually in like mid to late February, which made it really close to Adepticon. Like, because Adepticon's usually the 2nd to 3rd-ish week of March, and getting to that 2 conventions and traveling like that within a month can often be challenging. Now that they moved it up a month, it's on my mind. So if you're going to be out at LVO, maybe I might have to swing out by Vegas way. Absolutely.
Well, maybe we'll just make it a double date. You come to LVO, I'll go to Adepticon.
I like it. All right. So let's see. Other quick news bits. TMS, Tabletop Miniature Solution, who obviously just finished recently quite successfully their Kickstarter for the Vampire Covenant or Vampire Counts, however you want to think of them, for the Vampire Army. Sent me a note saying that they're going to be producing the 9th Age Quick Starter sets. It'll likely come out after the ETC, so that's pretty cool. Some more quick start support. I'm interested to see more info on that, and they're going to send some along as soon as we know more. So it'll be a little while because it'll be after the ETC, but there you go. I look forward to that. Any more chances to get your hands on good high-quality miniatures at a reasonable price, which is what TMS has classically done with all the armies they've made, I fully support. And that's a group of people who are, as I've said many times, TMS is an awesome company. It's a lot of artists who are following their passion and making great miniatures and price them very competitively. Like, it is everything we should be supporting in the world. So there you go.
Competition's great for everybody. Even if you don't like that stuff and you only like GW, competition for GW means that they're going to work harder to get your money. So it's a win-win for the customer.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I can't wait to get my zombie dragon from TMS from the last one. I'm pretty excited about that. So, all right. That's all of our news. Somebody just asked about Path to Glory. It comes out this week, and that leads right into my pick of the week. So Paul, you'll have to think of your pick of the week because I forgot to tell you in the notes that you have to have a pick of the week. That's my fault. So I'll go first and you can think of something. This is where we share a blog or video or podcast or something that we want people to know about. And mine is actually related to Path to Glory. Since the new and expanded Path to Glory is out this weekend, if you're interested in it because it has much bigger and better support for everything, the warbands are more balanced across the board, and there's some really cool options to play it with the actual Getting Started box sets. So you can literally start with the Getting Started box set as your Path to Glory force. If you're interested in a nice full review, then you should check out a friend of the show, Tyler Mingle's page. He has an awesome review of it. He goes into sort of a deep dive on the whole thing. I will link that review down below, so it'll be there after the show, so you can check that out. I highly recommend it. So there you go. All right. Now, have I bought you enough time, Paul, to think of something you want to share?
Tons of time. All right, so I'm not going to try and snub anybody on YouTube who's making content, but I do have to say that the new Warhammer Total War has been putting out a lot of cinematic trailers recently, and they just put out the Norska one. And the reason I want to share this is just because it gets my inner nerd going. You know what I'm saying? These cinematic trailers, man, just so much nostalgia, and like it kind of immerses you in the roles. You know, it was kind of like when Dawn of War 3 or something came out with 40K. You know, I get a little more hyped up. So whenever I see one of these cinematic trailers, it's just kind of cool, get you going. You know, same thing with like a movie trailer. You just kind of get in there and you're like, man, I want to go play some Warhammer. I want to paint some Warhammer. So if you haven't seen those and that's kind of your thing, it's a pretty cool trailer. So go check that out.
It is awesome. And the Norska was always my favorite. That sort of thing was always like my favorite chaos sort of element, incursion, whatever. It makes me think of Nordenwatch back in Warhammer. And when you talk about cinematic trailers, I still go back and watch the Warhammer Online cinematic trailers every so often.
Oh, it was so good.
Yes, exactly. Like every so often, I just go back and I'm like, I gotta watch that again. Yeah. All those little fights, like oh god, it's just you know what? I'm gonna throw the Warhammer Online trailer in the description just for nostalgia. So when you can get your full on, you can watch the new Norska trailer. You can swing right into some nostalgia and watch the Warhammer Online trailer. Watch some just badass duels between Warhammer archetypes. It's fantastic. I love it. Yeah. All right. From the orc flinging himself right into a castle wall to all the way up to like the elf duel. Oh god, it's so good.
All right, that elf was going to do something good.
Yeah, so build up and then just like splat. Oh, it's fantastic. Okay, all right. So let's go to, you know what? I think our hobby time is going to connect directly in to our directly into our topic this week, since we're talking mainly about the hobby. But what have you been working on, man? What's on your table?
So right now on my table is a Space Marine Intercessor. I'm sort of working on some, non-metallic metal style highlighting, doing some extreme highlighting on the Marines. I have the whole Dark Imperium box set. Got some, the new Space Marine stuff. I'm taking that sort of as my stepping point into 40K. I don't know if I will play these Marines. I will say quickly, I've been thinking about it more and more the more I do it. I want to say that Space Marines are actually one of the better hobby models to experiment with. There's just so many good angles, flat surfaces. You can experiment with just different techniques, weathering, all that stuff. So when they're cheap and well made like this, it's kind of hard to say no. So I got a pile of them on the table. I'm gonna do some videos for batch painting and just some more extreme stuff, but that's what I got. I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into some new models.
No, it's funny you say that. First of all, I totally agree with you. Like, I hate Space Marines as a thing, but I agree with your appraisal of them as an excellent hobby model to learn on and to experiment on and to push yourself on. What's fascinating about Space Marines is because of the nature of what they are, they, like a relatively new painter can get an awesome looking Space Marine on the table and something they're very proud of, but they're also a model that people can take up to an extremely high level and experiment with a lot of high-end techniques on. Like second place in the sci-fi single miniature last year was Gareth Nichols, who painted at Crystal Brush, since that connects to what we were talking about earlier, was a really, really, really wonderfully painted Ultramarine chaplain. And, like just you can do so many different things with them. And it's funny because one of the things that they talked about with the creation of the Stormcast for Age of Sigmar was wanting a similar body type that allowed people to do the same thing in fantasy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so
when you don't limit, you don't limit the colors. You don't limit anything. You can, there's different chapters, different combinations. You can play with your color palette. You can do whatever you want.
Right.
It's just open palette, blank slate. Do what you will.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. And how, I've seen so many different takes on it. The ultra clean Space Marine or Stormcast, the ultra weathered, dirty, rusty, chipped, pure metal, non-metal, like enameled, all these different things. Right. And they let you do all that. And it all looks correct. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Whereas you take something that might be, more quote unquote characterful. Okay. Like, let's take a witch elf. Okay. Like, there's only so many things you can do with a witch elf. You can vary her skin tone around and stuff like that. But in the end, she's, basically a sexy humanoid chick in a bikini. Like, that's what you've got. That's what you're working with. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just suddenly paint her like in metallic silver and have rust and weather effects on her boots.
Yeah.
It's not going to look right. I guess maybe
exactly.
Yes, I think maybe if she was like, she had gone through that cyborg making machine in Superman 3, I guess maybe that could happen, but that would be a rough thing to explain in the model. All right.
It'd be hard to do. And then from an economic standpoint, I mean, you can always get Space Marines cheap, and they're always in a starter box. You can buy 5 Space Marines for like $10. So,
yes. For me, I am working on something that I'm actually not too far away from done. Then they'll just need their little bases. But I'll hold these guys up here so that everybody can see them. What I am working on is finishing up Oh,
Are those the old school Albion Giants?
It is, my friend. It is the
Oh!
Albion Giants. We had to do a little bit of conversion on them because when I got them, they were almost whole, but I was missing like 2 pieces. Like I was missing 2 hands. So sadly.
When are these models even from? They're from like the late 90s?
Yeah, something like that. They're old Dogs of War / Storm of Chaos or something. So yes, the 2 Albion Giants. There you go. Very excited to finish these guys up. I've wanted these dudes for a long time. I decided to play around with them, play around with, some oil paints on them and stuff like that as well. Oh, and don't forget their little buddy. Of course, they got their little druid buddy with them too. But yeah, even though I hate metal, I have always had a love in my heart for those dudes because they're so classic and weird, and their body proportions are hilarious.
There's always that one old time mini that you're just like, I don't care. I need to have that model.
Yes, exactly. I will also say that, ironically, as it connects to our things, we're talking about hobby, I found my new favorite base for working with red hair. I've often found red hair to be an interesting challenge. I have a video on it. I like the video that I have on it is what I use for doing like very bright red hair. That is to say, something that's bordering on fiery, in other words, not realistic or naturalistic. Like most redheads don't have fiery red hair. You know what I'm saying? Most redheads, it's more red-brown. But I've never found a color or mixed a color that I really loved for it. And then, just randomly, I decided to try out of like the sort of transparent line. It is Vallejo Model Color Wood Grain. And this is my favorite paint I've ever found for doing a base of red hair. It has this wonderful, muted, perfect brown red for doing like realistic red hair. So there you go. There's my first one.
That's where it's at. And how do you just continually collect paint, Vince? Do you just kind of walk around and say, hey, I haven't tried that one. I haven't tried this one. You know who else does that? This guy.
That's right.
I just love trying out new paints.
Absolutely. Yes. I know there are people out there who really like very hardcore stick to like a set of paints. They just use this. Maybe they only use GW, or maybe they only use Vallejo, or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't really care. Pick your brand. But I can't do it, man. I'm constantly like experimenting with different types of paints, different things, trying different stuff. Yes, every time.
Okay. On that note, I will reiterate for people who missed you saying it. I have tried the Scale Color Intense Wood.
Yes.
You, sir, called it magical. You are not a liar.
I'm not. You know what's right here on my desk? Boom! The Intense Wood. Because these guys have got a lot of wood. These giants, they've got a lot of wood. Just
so much wood.
Yep. You got to get out the intense wood for that.
Yeah.
It is like sorcery, isn't it?
It was magic. Like I literally just had this. I had a stump. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of like a little stubby wood.
Sure.
It happens sometimes. But I literally barely even tried. Like you just put a little brown on there, a couple of the color variation, just chucked it on there, and I was like, oh my god. That is so nice.
It's a tree now. Like
it's just a tree. What happened?
Yes. So I found out that Intensity set, that was designed by Banshee. Okay, by the Spanish painter, by Alfonso Banshee. Okay. And like Banshee's not his real name, that's his painting name or whatever, who's really one of the best painters in the world. And he worked with them to design that Intensity set. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. One of the best painters in the world designed that ink set. So
yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yes. Yes. So, and absolutely, dude. Not just paints, but I'm always trying different things. So here's 2 things I'm playing around with right now that'll have probably a product review coming at some point in time in the future. So the first thing, I have to shake it because this separates really, really, really easily, but I do like it, is the Dr. P.H. Martin's iridescent calligraphy ink. So it's like calligraphy ink, but it's metallic. It has an ultra fine pigment, and it's meant to be airbrushed.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you just that? You're just that guy who's going for like the art and craft shop, and he's just got like a cart full of just random shit. He's just like, oh yeah, that'll work. Oh sure. Yeah.
Kind of.
I'm telling you, I've left Michael's craft shop those ladies give me the weirdest look.
Sure.
Man leaving there with arts and crafts and wire and twine and wood, and I'm just like, don't look at me, don't judge me, woman.
Exactly. In a similar, yes, that is, I have the exact same experience. You're in between two people who are checking out, like buying the flowers and the stuff for their arrangements or whatever, their sewing patterns. And you're like, look, your store has other purposes. Okay. Don't judge me. The other thing that I picked up, and this I'm pretty excited for, but I haven't, this is still in the package. I just literally got it today. Is the General's pure powdered graphite, professional artist's quality. Look at the size of this jar. This is so big. I did not realize what I ordered.
Not to scale.
I ordered this off of Amazon. And I was like, oh, this is fine. It was like, I don't know, $8 or $9. And I was like, okay, cool. And then this showed up. I was thinking it was going to be like this, right? And it's this.
What do we got in there? Like, is that like a weathering powder, or what are we doing with it?
Yeah, so it's graphite powder, just like what's in your pencil, right? But it's ultra fine. And the idea of it is to use it as, yes, you can use it for shading, for like weathering stuff, but specifically for weathering, shading, and sort of, what do I say, darkening steel, like true metallic steel.
Okay. So like your ends of your barrels and stuff like that, your hip joints, things like that. Okay.
Yes. And what's different about this than say, there you go, than say this, right? Your classic Vallejo, like this is carbon black pigment, right? Which is often used for the ends of barrels, is that graphite, if you've ever looked at the end of a pencil, has a sheen to it, right? It has sort of a natural sheen. And this will actually mix with mediums, water, other paints, and can have sort of interesting pigment. Like, it is a pigment. I mean, that's what it is. It's graphite. It's just graphite pigment. So you can really achieve some interesting effects with your steel. So I've seen a bunch of pictures of people trying it, and so I'm going to try it too, and we'll see how it works. So there you go. As you can tell, it's kind of messy. Like, once you get this stuff, like, you got to use gloves for this, because look at the outside of the package.
Yeah, it's gonna get crazy. You gotta be careful with that stuff, because you can also, start getting on your fingies, and you're grabbing models that you shouldn't be grabbing. So,
and that's never coming off. Yeah, exactly. And God forbid you ever do the old, if you've ever done the flock thing where you're like flocking a base and then you don't think about it, and you've got the flock container open behind the model, and you go to blow on the model, and then just like blow the grass everywhere. You do that with this, you might as well just throw your desk in the trash and get a new desk, because it's done. It's done.
I did that with some of the weathering pigments in a drawer on my side desk. Spilled one of them. Never opened that drawer again.
Yes. So those are my toys I'm currently playing around with. There you go.
Here's my current interest. So I was looking around on airbrush stuff. This is probably for bigger scale. I've been trying to figure out how to work it. So we got drywall tape.
Okay.
Which is actually a nice mesh. And let me see if I can grab it real quick. And some cupboard liner.
Ah, okay.
We have a couple different options for carbon fiber print for airbrushing. So it might be a little too large to scale. Probably work out for your larger things, your Titans, your tanks, your wave serpents, things like that. But trying to play around with it, see how it works, get some interesting patterns.
Nice. Yeah, I like that very much. So the idea is you're going to use it because it's naturally soft and could follow curves and stuff like that. The idea is you're going to lay it down on, say, like a vehicle, and then airbrush it to get the pattern.
Yeah, right? And so what you can do is you can stack up. I'm not going to take credit for this. This was on another YouTube video of a guy doing bigger stuff, but take a stack of index cards, actually, like, a couple index cards together, and just slide them along as you're kind of airbrushing, and it'll keep the mat down, and you can kind of get this nice little tint. So, spreading paint everywhere. So it's pretty nice. Seems like it works. I have tried the drywall tape, and obviously the drywall tape is adhesive, so that literally just sticks to the surface. So you don't got no problem with that. It gives some interesting textures. So, what's the?
Can you like peel a tiny end off the drywall tape? I want to see what the actual texture looks like.
It looks just like a screen, but it's just tape.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Sure. Yes. All right. I got it.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah. I wonder, thinking of some other things for that too. You could probably do interesting, like this pattern, actually, like a plaid pattern
Oh,
on
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
big shirt. If you had like a larger, obviously you'd have to be a larger scale mini, right? But
Mhm.
like 54 or 75 scale mini,
And
that's probably
the
actually pretty
other
accurate.
interesting ability is, depending on how, I mean, this is kind of crappy drywall tape, but what you can do is you can actually get your grid pattern. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
so you get your grid pattern and actually align things like you're saying, so you can do different patterns like, your plaid and things like that, where it would be really hard to just freehand that design. But if you can kind of airbrush it, have a grid on there lightly,
Right.
and then kind of fill it in. So might be nice for
Well,
that
I'm
purpose too.
also thinking like a grid, you turn that slightly sideways, it becomes diamonds, right? Like,
Oh,
like you
absolutely.
can,
Right.
yeah. And so suddenly doing things like Harlequin diamonds and stuff like that could be a much different proposition, because the size of that on like a vehicle, you could get some pretty tiny, accurate diamonds, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's interesting.
A lot of things to
All
try.
right. I'm interested to see these experiments. That's what I want to see, Paul. I want to see this content.
See what's
So,
happening. We got a lot on the plate here. A lot on the plate.
absolutely. All right. So let's get it. We've basically drifted right into it anyways. So let's just keep going. Let's get into the topic. So Paul and I are going to chat some hobby. We're going to talk about philosophy on hobby, sort of techniques we enjoy or find challenging, etc., etc. All those kinds of things. We're going to talk about our own struggles and where we've felt we've succeeded or failed and whatnot. So, first off, let's start with sort of the general philosophy. Okay. So your general philosophy on the hobby, what do you like to paint? Why do you like to paint it? Why do you paint, period? Because as you mentioned, like the thing that was drawing you back into the hobby, and you and I are very aligned on this, like the game is the game and we can enjoy the games, but ultimately it is the hobby, the painting part of it that often is where the passion lies for us. So what do you think is your specific hobby philosophy?
So I have read down here what I had is, and this is carryover from my competitive Magic. So your EV should always be positive, and that means your expected value should always be positive. And what I mean by that is every hour you should be enjoying your painting or hobbying, right? It should be fun. You should be learning something. It should not be a chore, right? So I just want to have fun. I want to learn something new. I want to relax. And all of those things are fulfilled by painting, right? There's always some way you can improve. There's always some way that you can just kind of come, sit down, let your mind kind of drain, sort of have some fun with it. And I find this in pretty much every model, right? Like, there was never a specific model type that I was like, I need this one specific thing, because I think that also limits yourself, right? If you're going about this trying to learn and have fun and try new things, if you do like one type of model or just a model that you think you're like or good at, that can kind of narrow you down a little bit. So I use it definitely as a stress reliever, definitely as a creative outlet. When you finish a model, that there's a certain little bit of high you get when you're just like, man, yeah, that's done, that's complete, that's ready to go. So you get a lot out of that feeling as well.
I totally agree with everything you just said. It's absolutely stress relief. It's absolutely that. And the idea of challenging yourself, like, I think one of the traps that people can easily fall into in the hobby is letting it become rote, right? Where they just keep doing the same technique over and over, applying it to mostly the same types of models. And then they wonder why they're bored or they hate the hobby, right? They're like, oh, I got to paint these more things. You turn it into a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you sort of mix it up and you try different models, different, game systems, different genres, different whatever, like there's lots of different ways to go. You can play within one game and still incredibly vary your palette or your selection. Or you just grab a model out of some other random thing, to just give it a paint, give it a try. Pick up a random Bones figure, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point being is that you just push yourself in some way, try new techniques. To me, that keeps it so much more fresh, right? And that's where I think for me, the real that sort of chasing the dragon, right? Of like that chasing after that, finishing the model high and doing something you enjoy. and never really being happy with what you do. I think that's the key. Also, you have to be happy you're done, but never really happy with it.
You're never satisfied with where you're at, right? I mean, I don't know how much this applies to our audience, but it's very similar. I enjoy exercising, and it's a very similar thing, right? You're only trying to battle yourself, right? This is just something that you do, and you want to do better than you did yesterday, right? So
yes, absolutely. Like that's a thing I try to drive home all the time, is that there's always going to be people better than you, right? Because there's only like the crop of people who are the best in the world is very short, very small, that list.
And those people are gifted, guys. Like we're talking about people who are gifted, like, right? You should not be doing this to beat people who, you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't let that deter you from having fun with the hobby. Don't look at someone and say, they painted the Mona Lisa and I can't paint the Mona Lisa, so I won't paint.
Right, exactly. If that was the case, there wouldn't be that many artists in the world. Yes, exactly. I completely agree. Like, and moreover, one, I don't know that you can't get there someday if you try, but those people who are in that sort of like extremely elite cast, Banshee and Kirill Kanaev and Roman Lapat and people like that, Jen Haley and Jessica Rich, these people have been painting for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? Longer.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it. Most of them do it as a job, as their full-time job.
That's what they do. Don't sell yourself short with what you're putting in, right? Like, I can't expect to be that good when I come home 4 times a week and paint for a couple hours, right? Like, what am I expecting here? Let's have some realistic expectations. I do this for fun. I'm not doing this to be the best in the world.
Exactly.
I would love to be the best in the world. Don't get me wrong, but who knows?
Yeah. They're putting in 2,500 hours a year, right? Like real hours into it. Mm-hmm. Most people are lucky if they get a couple hours a week, right? So it's a very different sort of thing. And I totally agree. All you should judge yourself against is yourself, right? Are you taking your next step in your own personal hobby journey? Are you doing something you enjoy? Are you having fun? Are you challenging yourself? Are you happy with a technique that you slightly improved or whatever, right? That's it. It's all just baby steps over and over again. Yes. Totally on board for that.
And you should always know that what makes you happy may not make the next person happy, right? Maybe you just love messing with green stuff and you like sculpting some things, but at the end of the day, you just put some primer and a 1 coat on that thing, but you sculpted that thing. It made you happy. Me personally, I've never touched green. I hate green stuff. So
I had to touch it for these guys because they're stupid metal. Yeah, no, here's a great example of that. So Mitch was watching earlier, right? So MC1 Gamer. I saw him making some comments. And Mitch has a passion for converting, right? As we know, he's always going to convert like 5 times as many miniatures as he's able to paint, right?
Yeah.
And he's going to spend hours laboring over these intense multi-kit conversions. That's his thing. And he paints them, and he's not a bad painter. I'm not saying that by any stretch. It's just that's not the part that thrills him. You know what I mean? He wants them to be painted and painted nicely, and he enjoys it. But the conversion gets his engine running, right? That's what it is. Making something new. Great. Awesome. Then he's found his bliss in the hobby. Yeah, totally agree. So here's where we have to, I suspect people, real quick on the one man's meat, the other man's poison thing. Nurgle's a great example of that for me, right? Like, you're never going to see a pussy, gross, boiled, weathered, awful, sort of model coming out of me. I'm never going to do, like, a bunch of people when the new box set came out did their putrid drones or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Bloat drone. Like, Dr. Faust put one up, and Aaron Lovejoy had one he put up, and a bunch of other people did one. And these people all are good. They like all that. They like that style. They like that thing. And I looked at them and I was like, that is some great work. They all did cool stuff. I have no interest in painting that model, right? Like, that is way outside of my thing I enjoy. Nope. But that's okay. So that leads us to the question of, what is your thing, Paul? If you had to identify your thing, right? what are your most enjoyable models to paint? Style, type, theme, whatever. You can define this however you want. What do you
So,
enjoy?
man, I've
And
always
why?
enjoyed
And
and
why?
felt good about a lot of barbarian type flesh models. I've enjoyed painting uh, unnatural flesh in terms of orcs. Um, I have this weird thing about you too, where like I can't do the super weathered like gnarly orcs. I like clean orcs. I don't know why, but like I love painting flesh tones because there's so much you can do in there, and there's almost it's kind of weird to say. I guess I'm a masochist. It's never right, right? Like you look at it, and I look at it, and I'm like, God, that's never right. I'm never done. And I think it's that challenge where you're like, God, that's almost what I want. And then you look at someone else's like flesh tone, and you're like, well, I put a little yellow in there. Oh my God, that looks amazing. Then you go try that, and it's just another thing. I feel like the flesh tones is sort of a thing for me where I love the earthy colors. I think they work well with my painting style. They blend well for me. They're a little bit more forgiving. That simplicity and that natural palette kind of feels good.
All right. Rock on. For me, if I had to narrow it down, I will openly admit I like painting. I like painting chicks. I like girl models. Nothing fetishistic about that. I just enjoy, as many female painters I've talked to who are well established say, if they had their choice, they would paint girls over boys, like female models over male models, because females are more interesting and have more interesting curves and stuff to work with. I agree. I like the aesthetic of women better than men. I like something that has curves more than a big giant rectangle. That's how it is.
I can tell you that, I mean, a lot of the very high end models I've seen when they're female figures, wow, they look great, right? Like, I can't tell you if it's just the curves, like you're saying. I don't know if it's just the depth of what they're doing, but when you got that, lovely female figure and stuff, you're just
exactly. There's it's to me, it's the artistic appeal of it. Yes, nothing gross. You can read into however you want, but I don't. There's nothing gross about it. And many of those models, I will say, end up in my wife's possession. Like especially the ones I end up doing for competition. So, for example, I painted like a Cinderella last year just for a personal project because I like Cinderella and she had like a big evening gown and it was an interesting challenge and stuff. And my wife loved it and ended up taking it, and now it's it sits in her office. So it's that kind of thing. I'm not, I don't, they don't need to be in bikinis or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. It's the form. Anywho, the other thing that I enjoy, I totally agree with you on the flesh thing, by the way. These giants being a great example, right? Like, what I was really excited to do with these guys was like, because they obviously have a lot of skin tone showing, especially this dude. I was like, it's time to get out the oil paints. It's time to go nuts, right? Start working some different tones in and seeing what we can do. Because I agree, like, sometimes I use existing flesh tones. Sometimes I play with mixing them straight from just, an artist color set, red, yellow, blue, white, black, and go that direction. And it's so fascinating to play with, like, what if I just put some purples in here? What if I put some greens in here, some reds, blues, yellows? Like, you can just get everything in there. Skin is ridiculous in what you can do. And that's just like assuming normal Caucasian flesh tone, right? Like sort of what we think of when people write flesh on a paint bottle, as opposed to, all the various other normal flesh tones that are in the world and don't get labeled as flesh for whatever reason. But like, painting darker skin tones, painting, alien unusual skin tones, like fun. I really, really love like blue skin tones. I find that to be really fun. Like this girl up here, you can just see her. She's like the, one of the Bones giants. I don't remember which one. Cloud Giant, I think. Like I love doing blue skin tones and trying to work interesting colors in there, greens and shifting and color shifting in yellows and stuff like that. So yes, I agree because it's an endless challenge. Skin is so complicated, right? And you can do so much with it. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So all right, that's what we dig. I get that. All right, let's talk about something that you and I are both fond of. and that is the airbrush. Okay, let's spend a little time talking about the airbrush. I have a video called Just Buy an Airbrush. A lot of it's one of the more popular of the hobby cheating series. It's one that you and I did a big talk about. I recorded it way back when, multiple years ago, when you and I went through a big airbrush talk. Mm-hmm. But here's what I want to, like, I know a lot of people are like, first of all, there's the cadre of people out there who think it's somehow cheating or anathema or whatever. That's just hipster crap. I don't even want it. That's just silly. I know. It's just hipster crap.
I only play basketball on one leg because 2 legs is cheating.
Exactly. My answer to that is simple. Fine. You know, whatever you like, man. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm not trying to force your hand. But my point is, the most precious resource I have in my life is time. That's the only thing I can't get back. Every second that falls away is one more sand through the hourglass of my life until I'm dead. So I better use that time effectively. And the airbrush is simply faster to achieve a lot of things. That's the hard reality of it, man. So what do you what like you were, I think, onto the airbrush before I was, because I got mine, I think, after we started talking to some degree. And I think you were one of the people that kind of said you really should look into this, several years back.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. It just adds another dimension in like we were talking about earlier, the fun of the hobby, right? Like, you get tired of a brush, pop on the airbrush. And there's just so many different, like you said, there's effects that you straight up can't do with a brush that you can do with an airbrush. And then there's time-saving effects, right? Like, I mean, if I have this rounded, large surface, right, why would I use a point to try and paint that when I could simply highlight and blend perfectly with a cone of paint that just comes out smoothly, right? Like, these techniques and things, it's not cheating. It's just using all the tools that are available to you, right? Like, it's like there's no reason not to use it. And I would say if you are a sci-fi painter, whatever that means to you, you absolutely should have an airbrush. These things are incredible for large surfaces. When you have to get multiple coats down on your big flat surfaces, it's just so good. It honestly, compared to the hobby, it's really not that expensive. I think a lot of people are like scared that it's gonna be really expensive, and you can get like a whole good setup for probably, what do you say, maybe like $300.
Oh, a really nice setup. I mean, let's be honest. You can get started in it with a cardboard box and $80 off Amazon, right, to get your airbrush and your basic compressor. But you can get a really great setup with like all the different stuff you need, like, your little cup for emptying your thing into, and your airbrush booth and all that. Yeah, 300. You're into the gills, right? You're good to go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's stuff like, I mean, Ant just put up a video of his Space Marines and stuff like that. It's like painting a bunch of Space Marines. Like, yep, sign me up for an airbrush. I don't have to paint a million models red. Like, I don't. At this point, it's like, yeah, thank you. I'll take that. Seems good.
Yes. Yeah, it feels like, to me, it's exactly what you said. It's the right tool for the right jobs. It's not something you put in everywhere. Like, you can use it wrong, just like anything else, right? Like, you can try to shove it and do work that it shouldn't be doing. That's not what it's for. But it would be like saying, well, I don't use wrenches. What do you mean you don't use wrenches? What if you've got a thing that you need a wrench for? I just don't use a wrench. I use pliers instead. What? It's the wrong tool.
Why would you do that?
Right. It doesn't make sense. So, like, to me, it's exactly that. It's another tool in the toolbox. And when you need to do things like turn 80 Space Marines from not red to red, I would rather do that quickly, because I don't find a lot of artistic value in just turning them red.
Sounds like something I can turn on the radio and just go brrr. Seems good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You have to ask yourself, like, okay, if there is artistic value to what I'm doing, is every single step of it that art achieved, or is some of it just the stuff you're doing to get going? Right. And to me, that's where it shines. Which, leads me to, obviously, I've said this 100 times. I'm going to say it 100 more on every show. It will be the epitaph on my tombstone. Okay. And that is, the airbrush lets you easily zenithal highlight. And if that alone is all you ever did, you never even used it to put real colors on. Okay. If you literally just stopped at priming and zenithal highlighting, it would still be the best investment of your hobby career.
You mean so I don't have to buy $10 paint cans?
So you don't have to buy $10 to $15 paint cans, so you get an even, clean base coat that doesn't obscure detail. Like, everybody's like, I use rattle cans, it's fine, I don't obscure detail. And then the second they use an airbrush, they're like, never mind. I see now what the difference is. So to me, like, just having your model zenithal means suddenly you can do glazing a lot easier and build in colors with your brush, right? And it becomes so much easier to paint. Stop painting over flat black. Get yourself an airbrush, even if it's just a cheapie, to do that priming, and it will make your hobby life so much better. It's ridiculous. It, like, just that alone. If I could stop everybody from just painting over straight black, or most people, some people may have reasons to do it, and that's fine.
So every time in I just have the tip of the day from Warhammer, and I love this.
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I love the series they put out. The guy seems great. It's a great thing for the hobby. But every time he's like, I'm gonna put this blue or this red over the black coat, and I'm like,
Yeah. And I get it. They have to appeal to a wide audience. Most of their audience probably doesn't have an airbrush, but my God, like, that over zenithal. I wish, like, if Games Workshop would start repping zenithal, and I don't know why they shouldn't, because you can do it with a rattle can, right? You can, like, prime black and then spray.
Why would exactly? Use twice as much paint.
They could sell double the rattle cans. Like, I need to get Duncan on the horn and just.
I just put him on the YouTube channel. You know, just have him shaking both up, just like spraying them all over the place.
Yeah, like, buddy, I can double your rattle can sales in the next year. I've got the marketing plan of marketing plans, and it will change everybody's life. Like, that actually gets a viewership that could make a dent in people, unlike myself. But I'm going to try. Every convert I get is like, yes, another person whose life I'm saving time out of. I'm happy to do it.
I think I'll go on the crusade with you. Just every opening hobby video, I'm just gonna, like, have them all and be like, now I am assuming you're zenithal highlighting.
Exactly. I assume you start from a zenithal base coat because you don't want to waste your life. So we're going to go ahead from that point forward. Okay.
Because you shouldn't hate good things.
Yes. All right. I have a bugaboo about this one, admittedly. Okay. And that sort of leads into the next one, which is your favorite tools and tricks. We already talked about the airbrush a little. Let's talk about some favorite tools and tricks. So what are some of yours? Like, when you look at the hobby tricks you employ, what are some of them that you use that you particularly enjoy? It could be a particular thing, paint, brush, style. I don't care. Whatever you like.
All right. So I got a few things that I really like. In my opinion, and I've seen some videos where, you know, probably better artists than me think otherwise, but I think that you should get yourself a good high quality set of brushes. I like Winsor & Newton. There's plenty of high quality other brushes. I think that you should try different paints. I think what we talked about earlier, I think you should always try different paints because different paints will fit different people's styles. One of my favorite fun little things, especially when you get your airbrush, is masking. And what I mean by masking is, like, there's a lot of flat surfaces. So this guy has some tape over him. He also has this goo, which is simply just silly putty. It's literally just red egg silly putty, and it's great stuff. You can mask. You can do things. I love masking models. I think it adds a lot of fun with the airbrush. You can do things that you probably, again, as Vince said, when you get good, you realize you probably shouldn't be doing some of these things with masking, but you still try anyway because it's fun. And then I think my most favorite tool, and we're going to get a little philosophical on this one, Vince. You ready?
Mm-hmm. I'm ready.
The internet. Okay?
It's an awesome pick.
There is a plethora of knowledge to the point that it's confounding, right? There's so much information out there. Whatever the hell you want to do, just put it into Google, right? And you'll find 3 tutorials. Like, I think Vince's entire series is amazing, right? And that's a prime example, right? You always find some of Vince's series, but it's not like, I feel like the first semester, it's not like you're doing something novel. There's so many people doing these, and they're all over the place. So you can get a different style. You can get a different person talking to you if their style doesn't work for you. You can get whatever you want. But it's like, just for an example, how do I paint marble? Vince's tutorial comes up. 4 different tutorials from, Cool Mini or Not come up. And it's just an endless supply of step-by-step, how do I do this thing? So if you don't know where to start, if you don't know, what exactly you want to do, just do some research.
Yeah, I will say that on the piggyback of that, because that's you're addressing techniques, and I'll make it specific too. My first step anytime I'm going to paint a model is to Google image search that model as well.
Oh yeah,
right.
I didn't even, and I do that as well. Absolutely.
Because I want to see how other people have interpreted it. It helps you notice detail on the painted model you might not notice in the bare metal, plastic, resin, whatever. Just like for 100 reasons, I always start there just to like look around, draw inspiration. I've never copying things directly other people are doing, but in the same way that like as an author, you should spend a lot of time reading, right? Like all authors say the main thing they do is read other people's work. As an artist and miniature painter, you should be looking at other people's miniature painting and drawing inspiration from that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I kind of laugh. I'm a big fantasy reader. And when people say dumb things like, well, this is just a Tolkien clone, it's like, yeah, everyone read Tolkien. Of course it influenced them, you dumb. Yes.
Yes. There are a lot of those, to be fair. Like, yes.
To be also specific, like you said, looking at another model, it really helps with like non-metallic metal and like lighting effects. A lot of times things bounce weird, or like when you start looking at a model for a really long time, sometimes you just need to back away and be like, how does this actually look to someone else? And the best way to do that is look in some miniature painting galleries. You can pick out and be like, oh, that's how they interpret how the light would hit this. That's pretty cool. Maybe I'll do it that way, or maybe I'll interpret it another way and do it a little slightly different. See how that looks.
Yep. No, I agree. It is funny because light placement, I think to some degree, miniature painting is the study of light, right? Like that's almost, that's most of the shooting match of what we're engaged in here at a high level, and how light interacts with color and trying to play the scale game, and looking at other people's interpretation of how the light would interact with the model, I think is often instructive for sure. All right, so my own little favorite, I'm going to use this chance to spruik the thing that I love more than anything in the world when it comes to paints. Most of the time when it comes to paints, I tell people use whatever you like, whatever you enjoy paint line wise is fine. If it works for you, it's the right one. Like right now in front of me, I have like sitting on that these models were used. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different manufacturers' paints are sitting in front of me on my desk that were used for these giants. So whatever you like is cool. However, there is one thing that I'm going to talk about that I think is the only appropriate paint as long as you're talking acrylics. And that is your Vallejo metal color. If you're doing steel specifically, true metallic metal, and anything that's not in acrylic, right? Because there are like alkyd and stuff like that. It's a little different if you're in enamels or something like that. But if you're in acrylic paint and you're not using this, I would argue you're doing it wrong. There you go. That is my hardcore belief on this subject. These paints are sorcery. They are unlike anything else that I've used. In the same way that I mentioned the intense wood is sorcery to make wood, this makes metal. Like you put this on, you're like, oh, that thing's metal now. That's legitimately metal. It looks like metal. It acts like metal. It reflects like metal. It's metal. And also it goes straight through your airbrush like butter, unlike most metal paints. So
Vince is just about to infomercial this thing and just chuck the rest of his models.
Billy Mays here for Vallejo metal color. All right. So yes, exactly. So that's certainly one of my picks. The other one I would like to argue for something that people might not think. I totally agree with you. You've got to have a good set of brushes. Like you've got to have a nice brush with a nice point. But now I would like to argue for something entirely different, which is the crappy brush. I would like to argue on behalf of the crappy brush. You need to have a good brush. It needs to have a sharp tip. There is work that you're going to need to do to have that. But I would now like to argue for the crappy artist bought in a hobby pack garbage acrylic brushes. Yes, exactly. That you need to have a good number of around for doing stuff like dry brushing, for doing stuff like slopping washes around on terrain or
wait a minute, like Vince, you're a talented painter. You telling me you dry brush things?
Hey, absolutely. If it's the right technique for the right job, yeah.
Get out of here. That's crazy.
Yes, I am definitely not. I am anti dry brushing for the wrong tasks. In the same way, I don't use hammers to pull screws out of the wall. Right? Like it's you don't right tool, right job. When you have the right texture, often like very tight, small fur or something, or you want to have scuffed up metal, can be a great job where you get out the dry brushing. Right? Terrain, mud, sand. It's time to start dry brushing, folks. You're not going to pick out individual grains of sand. Let's not, come on now. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have that one crappy brush that you push around some Elmer's glue and stuff with on your bases?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Another good one. Yes, you got to have the crappy brush. I've got my glue brush down there too. Yes, where you're pushing around your glue water mixtures. Yes. In defense of the crappy brushes, you got to keep a good selection of them around. Just go, on Amazon or to your Hobby Lobby or whatever. You pick up a pack of them. That way you can just screw them up and not care. Yes.
All right. So I have to ask you if you're as anal as I am when it comes to, do you keep a separate set of brushes for metallics and acrylics?
That's a great question. I do not. I'm not that anal about it, but I will say I do try to avoid using my good brushes in metal paint because metal pigment will screw up your brushes. It's real metal. It will tend to shred sable hair easier. That being said, if I'm doing very fine work, I will, as long as you're in the metal color paints, which are much thinner and are much more liquid, and so will tend to stay wet a lot longer.
Metal color paint.
Indeed. I will often I usually base coat with a garbage brush just to get it all there. And when I'm just pushing around like light highlights to create the light points and light catches on the steel, then I go to the nice brush. But I just make sure to rinse it frequently and often, right? So, yeah,
it's fair.
Sure. I'm not as anal about that. My other tool of choice is we'll say something like, here you go. It's this. We'll just pick up this. It's your humble cork, right? Your nice cork or your blue tack and an old paint bottle or something like that to hold your models. It cannot be stated how important it is to have something comfortable. Yes, exactly. To hold your models. Like one of the things that kills me in the Warhammer TV videos is he's always holding his models directly. And that's the one thing Duncan does that I wish he wouldn't do because it teaches people a very bad habit. Like it's a good way to get yourself fatigue and to hurt your hand, right? I don't mean like you're gonna permanently damage something. I'm not talking about like getting carpal tunnel. I just mean like you can't paint as long and your hand's gonna get sore and it's annoying and you're gonna tend to get oil into your paint and push paint around and accidentally leave a fingerprint somewhere and whatever. Just it has all bad things when all you needed was to spend $2 on crappy blue tack and take an old bottle of paint. Or Tom uses his kids' old baby food jars. Okay,
hey, that's a great one.
Sure, like you need something roughly round that, like, again, if you just let your hand rest, this is how your hand rests. So make something about that big, right? That way your hand is comfortably holding the item.
I will say, if you really, really, really want to touch the model, I would recommend at least glove it. At least glove it.
Which
your hand is very abrasive. You will rub off stuff. It will just it's just not good.
There you go. But now, this is let's see. Ambidextrous, non-sterile, powder-free, 100 gloves. There you go. And this was, I don't know, cheap as dirt off Amazon.
I would
lasted me forever.
I may or may not have stolen it from work, so I don't really want to incriminate myself.
Yes, you can get a nice, cheap, giant box of gloves off Amazon that will last you for the rest of your life. And yes, I usually have it on my left hand, the hand that's actually going to touch the miniature in some way. Yes. I see there are people that have like real nice base holders that are like, they have the little extra bar so you can like hold it like that and move it. That's fine if you want to go that direction. I've seen some really nice ones but at the same time, you don't need to. That's just if you really enjoy that sort of thing. A old paint bottle or baby food jar or a big piece of cork or something like that and some blue tack and you're off to the races. That is a absolutely critical one for me. Any other tools you can think of that we should mention as being the absolute essentials?
I don't think so. I mean, we hit a lot of it. Nothing that we're gonna get. You know, I'm literally just glancing around.
Sure, as much mileage out of, yeah. Like when I think about the things I use every single time, those are the things that I'm using every single time.
The thing that I tend to value. I live in a pretty arid place. It's rather dusty. I would say, especially if you're taking time away from a model for a significant amount of time, put it in a drawer, put it in a container, cover it, put a baggie over it, something like that. I've found that at least, you know, you get the little kind of lint, the crap in there, and you start painting, and it's just not great. So it's one thing that I was kind of looking around. I was like, got some drawers and containers to put stuff in and models in when I'm working on them.
Nice. I don't have that problem, but more humid climate, which leads me to the last thing I will mention, which is your old wet palette.
Yep.
Yeah, the wet palette being another thing that you can get super cheap. Once you get one, it will more or less last forever. You might need replacement sponges, you know, a couple years down the road or something like that.
I think we have the same one. He's talking on the order of like $15. Like it's
yes,
you can build your own, but in my humble opinion, you're wasting your damn time. Just have Amazon deliver for $15.
I would tend to agree with that. It is the Masterson Stay, or is that what it's called? Yeah, Masterson's. Yeah, Stawet. Yes. Stawet. Yeah, I mean, it's cheap as all dirt for how much I've used it. It, like, I can't even imagine the thousandth of a penny per hour I've paid for it at this point. Yeah. And you know, the amount that it extends the working time of your paints, it's a game changer. Game changer.
Yeah. And I've found is an intro level, the like minimum value is like people not thinning their paints enough usually.
Yep.
And like even just having the wet palette to pull out your paint and like wet it as you go on the palette just sort of like tends to help people. So just wet palette, just do it.
Yes. People asked about it, but so I'll mention real quick. Yes, of course, your hobby knife, you know, your knife, your drill. Yes, all these things are good. Absolutely. Like, you know, I have my little crappy hobby drill. I actually use, so for my hobby knife, in case anybody's curious, you'll notice it's actually like a scalpel, like a true scalpel.
Because Vince kills people when he's not making videos.
That's correct. If you scanned that way, it would just be a pile of bodies. So I actually use surgical steel blades. They tend to be sharper. They tend to slice through things really easily, including your own flesh if you happen to miss. So do be careful with those.
Please band-aid your finger preemptively. It will save your finger. Yeah.
It's a good point. I have hacked the heck out of my hands. On the bright side, you can make some sweet red paint with blood. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there. Make lemonade, right? That's all I'm saying.
Like a permanently lost feeling in that thumb.
Exactly. The callus. Yes, absolutely. I was, it's funny you mentioned that. I was drilling out. So I was using this, which is actually like, a clay, one of the clay shaping tools, right? For like you working with green stuff. And it just has like this ultra sharp point on it. I was using it to drill like a lead hole out of a gun barrel the other day, like out of a 40K gun barrel. And I skipped it out of the barrel and put it into my thumb so deep that when I took my hand away, it stuck. Okay.
What's funny is like, I'm sure at this point, it's not even like a painful cry. You're just like, God damn it.
Yes, it happened. And I was like, oh, son of a, you know what I mean? It's like, I just
pull it out, the blood comes out. You're like, ugh.
Yeah, I pulled it out. Now, fortunately, because I use alcohol-based paints and stuff like that, I keep 90%, you know, proof alcohol, like 90% rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol around. So I just, and fresh paper towels. I was like, yep, no problem. Just wipe that off, clean that down, wrap it up. We're good to go. We're back to painting again. Like,
Fun fact of the day, make sure you use 70% IPA. It's actually more efficient at killing germs.
Oh, neat. Well, the 90 plus is better for alcohol-based paints. So there you go. Good to know, though. I have some 70 down here, too. I'll remember that next time. I'll get that out.
Just trying to help you out, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. No,
gangrene's a hell of a thing.
You know what? Yes, exactly. You don't want your thumb falling off. Yeah, it's not good. That is going to impede your hobby painting if you missing fingers.
If you should take away anything from this episode, don't get gangrene.
Sure. That's, I think, the one hobby lesson we want you to really internalize. Well, really, zenithal highlighting.
Then
Don't
gangrene.
get gangrene.
Like if you zenithal highlight and get gangrene, like whatever, you're doing fine.
It's probably still worth it.
Yeah,
I would agree. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a couple hobby proud nails. So these are things that people often have challenges with. I thought we'd pick a few and talk about them and how we've overcome them. Sort of share a little experience on the thing. Okay. All right. So do you have a hobby proud nail you want to start with?
So actually I have two. I wrote down, so I got one for the community, a hobby proud nail for the community, and one for myself. So for the community, we'll start with, I always hate the perceived barrier of entry to hobbying and painting specifically. I think we sort of touched on it before with, like, you know, talking about how, you know, some people are just really, really good and it shouldn't help you impede you from hobbying. But I think that there's this really weird thing where people just see other people's work and then just assume they can't do that. So I think that that's sort of something I just would really wish people didn't do. You know, the number of times we hear, I can't paint, it's like, I'm terrible, I can't, there's no way I could possibly do that. Right? Like, you can, just don't expect to do a golden demon the first time you paint, right? Like, I'm sure the first time Vince put paint on a model, it was not great.
Oh,
right?
It was like, straight up hideous. I think I've shared some of my early models on camera before, but yes, they're like, bad doesn't begin to describe it. There you go.
Right? Like, I remember priming an orc black and putting some brown over it and then just doing an edge highlight of like some crappy metal, and it was a terrible squiggly line for edge highlight. Like, it doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means you have some time to grow, right? Like, you just need to put some effort in, don't let it deter you. And I think that's the saddest part of, is the barrier of entry for people to get into painting. I think people, if they sort of release the expectations and just let themselves paint and have fun, I think it would be much better.
I totally agree with that. You know, there was a little comic that was kind of making its way around that was all about writing. Like, I saw it circling around on Facebook or whatever. It was about writing, but then somebody reshared it and said, this applies to miniature painting as well. And it was like a person complaining, saying, I don't get it. How come I can't achieve this great thing in writing? And he's talking to the other person who is successful. And they're like, well, I don't know. I just practiced a lot. And eventually I got there. And the person says, well, I did. He points behind him to a big stack of, you know, assumingly discarded papers that's about like this high, right? And he's like, but I have practiced this much. And then it goes back to the other successful person. He's like, and it's sort of, the camera pulls back and you see like the person and then a mountain of, you know, paper behind him. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I guess maybe do it more. Like, that's, you know, there is truth to that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it's that age old question. It's like, hey, Vince, during my hiatus, I've noticed that your painting skills have improved. What magical brush or paint set have you found that made your paint skills so good?
Well, I did cut a deal with the devil, so that was nice. I mean, that really upped my game.
I mean, Lucifer is a good option.
Absolutely. I also got into voodoo a little bit. I was sacrificing chickens. You know, I
have noticed that kitten blood does make good paint.
Sure. I accidentally was in a wacky like adventure where toxic waste spilled on me, and the superpower I gained was miniature painting. Kind of lame. Not like,
yeah, I feel bad for you on that one, to be honest.
Yeah. Could have been like flying.
You get out, you're like, God damn it! This isn't fair? That dude can shoot webs out of his hands and things.
Yeah.
I just stuff.
Yeah, I just got to paint. No, I mean, obviously, it's not to say that I didn't find new paints that I liked or that aligned better with my skill or found new colors that I enjoyed. Like I just mentioned the wood grain thing at the top of the show, right? Like, you're always finding things, but that's just it. There's never been one moment like that. I want to try to push myself to achieve this thing. And so that's where I would alter the common statement of just practice. Like, my only addendum or caveat to my previous statement would be, practice alone isn't enough. Like, if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again with no sort of intention other than to get your figures done, you will not improve in any real tangible way, right? Like, deliberate practice matters. You want to try a new thing, you try the new thing, you suck at the new thing, you try the new thing again, you're better at the new thing, rinse and repeat, right?
And
you have to deliberately push yourself.
External feedback is a great thing.
Yeah.
Don't think you're too bad to post things. Like, come to the PMP. Everyone's super nice. Everyone's super helpful. Whatever quality of miniature you want to paint, there's people there that can help you. And practicing in isolation, also not a good thing, right? Like, you need external feedback. You need some reinforcement. You need positive reinforcement too, right? Nothing's better than someone saying, "Hey, man, that model looks great."
Yeah, everybody who's painting stuff in the PMP, there's always like, we do 4 or 5 hour reviews of everything at the end of the month. Every single model has elements I like. It doesn't mean there's not things that person could improve. Every single person, including myself, including anybody, has things that they could improve, period, right? There is no perfect miniature painter. There's no platonic form. That doesn't exist, right? That's not the point. And I agree totally. Get that feedback. Compete. It's funny you mentioned that, as we just did wrap up our first annual PMP painting competition, and there were almost 60 people competing in there. It's an open competition, absolutely. And what do I have here? But I happen to have, this is one of the trophies for the show this weekend.
Trophies?
There's trophies, absolutely. So these will be going to the winners, which I know, but nobody else does. But we'll know this. You'll know this weekend when we do the show. So we're going to do the PMP first annual painting competition awards this weekend, where we'll go through everybody, give the feedback, and show everybody gold, silver, bronze, honorable mention, etc. And we'll give our first places out. So there you go.
Not going to show it out to everybody out there. I saw a lot of thank yous on the PMP, which are well deserved, but that was a ton of time and effort on your part. I know for a fact you wouldn't half-ass anything, so good on you. That is an excellent addition to the community.
We're definitely going to do it once a year. We're going to not do it more than once a year, because you aren't wrong about the amount of time. That's not me trying to be like, oh my God, woe is me. No, I'm just saying, like, I loved doing it. It was super fun, but holy crap, more than once a year would kill me. But at the same time, it was fun, and I've decided this is going to become a yearly thing. We're going to do this painting competition. So, yes, I'm excited about that. Along a similar line, I think one of my proud nails that I want to touch on is freehand, right? The old demon freehand. And this is the thing I see. This is the response that's often completely nonsensical to me. So I see a lot, I use freehand a lot, as much as I can. I enjoy it. It's fun to challenge yourself because it's always hard. And I see people say, I couldn't do that freehand or something. One, yeah, you could. There's nothing special about me. I have no natural talent as an artist. If I can do it, you can do it. That's number one. But number two is they say that as they're posting painted miniatures. My point being, you weren't born with the innate knowledge of how to paint a miniature, right? Like, you learned whatever techniques you did to get to the point you are, and you learned how to create a painted miniature that looks good, or that looks like wherever it looks like. It's the same thing. There's no difference. It's just it's paint and a brush and water. There's no other secret sorcery in there, right? So, like, yes, it's not going to be like, there are freehand painters out there who do, like Richard Gray, who does stuff that I'm just like, that I look at and my head explodes, because I'm like, holy crap, he is skilled beyond measure. But at the same time, that's because he has practiced doing that for years. And this really locked in my head. Richard Gray does some painting competitions. He's coming to the U.S. I'm totally going to try to get one of his classes when he comes around. But he shared the results of his like 8-hour freehand painting seminar, wherein he had just a bunch of people who signed up. None of these were incredibly gifted, freehand painters, right? And he shared their results. And you know what? They were all amazing. Every single one of them. The dozen results he shared, guess what? The 12 of those people were not all like Monets in secret, right? That wasn't what it was. They just had a good teacher who explained the principles, and then they practiced them.
I think what's interesting too is, like you mentioned, I think people are underestimating, like you said, painting on a model, right? Like, really the difference is there, your reference material is tangible and in front of you. That's what you're painting off of, right?
Right.
Just get some reference material and practice a little bit. Like you said, I'm not an artist. I just got a sketchbook, and when I need to do something, just go get some reference material and try it until you like what you got. And that might be a little while, but it's not an unattainable thing. Like, I would say I am a terrible hand artist. Like, the thing is too is I can't. There's no way that in my mind I psych myself out. So like doing something, a novel something from nothing with no reference material seems impossible. And I think that is a very difficult thing for a lot of people, right? That's sort of a different skill set than what you're looking for. So take your reference material, practice it, play around with it, and don't be intimidated. Just give it a go.
Right. Start simple. Do a skull or a flag, like a little, like a little leaf or something. Like, it doesn't matter. Pick a simple thing, a cross, a fleur-de-lis, a whatever, right? There are simple forms and shapes that are just triangles and lines. And again, Google image search is your friend, right? Like,
the internet's there. There's
yeah,
step-by-steps for everything.
Yep, absolutely. Like, here's an easy, here's a great example. Okay, the Knight Titan, who's also down there, he's right there. And that guy has a bunch of roses on one of his shoulders, right? I know what a rose looks like. I think most people probably know what a rose looks like. Before I painted a single rose onto that Knight Titan, I Google image searched, or just Google searched how people paint roses, like on, canvas painters. I watched a couple people canvas paint on YouTube videos of roses. Then I took a piece of paper out and I sketched some. Then I painted those on the piece of paper. And once I was satisfied that I had internalized it enough, I went and did it on the miniature, right? And I think they came out nice. Did I just magically, innately know how to paint a rose? No. I just tried to figure it out and plowed my way through until I got something that was close enough, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. So, yes, totally agree. All right, so what's your second one?
So this one is a personal struggle, Vince. This one I just dirtle with. I'm gonna coin it as brush stroke efficiency.
Okay.
Good Lord, I meander on the same piece of real estate on the model for the longest time, right? It's one of those things where I paint it, let it dry, look at it, go, nah, a little more of this. That's definitely not what I want. A little more than this.
Sure. And
then four iterations later, you come back to the second iteration that you already had, and you're like, oh yeah, that's it. And then you're like, well, I just spent 45 minutes on that. So, and I think that comes back to comfort level and experience, right? I mean, I'm not at that point where I know exactly what I'm looking for. And I think someone who's more experienced and done more models is just going to say, well, I don't need to do that same brushstroke 400 times. I can just do these couple little things and get darn near the same effect.
Well, it can also be a question of, do you know exactly even what the effect is you're trying to achieve, right? What exactly the outcome looks like, whether it's color placement or the exact light or stuff like that. And it's not like just suddenly being incredibly talented and doing this for a long time necessarily guarantees you that. So Marika Reimer, who has won like Best in Show at Gen Con for forever, and who runs Destroyer Minis and is truly one of my favorite miniature painters. She's incredible. Okay. The first thing she does on the miniature she paints, and again, she paints amazing minis, has years of experience, is a fantastic painter, one of the best. The first thing she does is she prints a black and white image of the miniature out and paints it quickly, like just quick paint sketches using the color she thinks she's going to use onto the black and white image, like quickly places some highlights, doesn't worry about smooth blending or anything, right? She's just literally like throwing color around to get like a rough image of what it's going to look like and says, do I like how that's going to look? That's her first step, right? She takes 10, 15 minutes and just sketches that out real fast because she doesn't know what it's going to look like, right? And in the end, obviously what it means is she increases what you will call brushstroke efficiency, I suspect, right? Because then she knows what she's aiming at. She can like play with that. So yeah, there you go. I like that. I think I'm the same way, though I'm not sure I hate it. Here's what I'll say. I think one of the things that like kills me is over detailed miniatures. There is something wonderful about a miniature that's like almost all skin, right? And you just have to make the visual interest happen. You know what I mean? Like you don't have the luxury of all the model detail. And so I will say I do enjoy just sitting there for hours blending skin tones, like just slightly pushing it, a little more purple, a little more blue in the shadows, a little more of this in the highlight, right? And you just keep pushing it. There is something almost zen about that, right?
I will give you that. As long as I know the detail fatigue is real on some of these GW models. I like look at it and I'm like, I don't even know where I want to go with that because there's just so much going on. It's like when you can kind of just enjoy your blending time and just kind of do your thing. That is nice. That is nice.
The Zangor Shaman were a great example of that for me recently. Like those models are just too much. Like that needed to be scaled back. It's just
you paint a third of the model and you're like, all right, I'm done here.
Yeah, I am exhausted. Why is this not? How am I not further along on this thing?
Yeah. Your wet palette is just a smattering of paints. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. If I have to go through, so like what I use for the actual wet palette paper in my wet palette is the P3 palette paper. I've just found those to be, you get a bunch of them, you know, like super cheap and whatever. Like, there are some of those recent minis that I've gone through like 3 of these sheets on, and I'm like, this is getting ridiculous.
This is absurd.
Right. Like if I've had to use all of the real estate of this 3 times, and I'm a fairly minimalist person with like just slapping, like I've got these colors on here, let's just make these work. And where I can't even make what's on their work or mix from it, I have to go to a new one. That's when we've gone off the rails. Yeah, that's what I'll say. But I agree. For me, the other thing that I think about when I think about sort of proud nails that can be a challenge is batch painting. I wanted to talk about batch painting.
Oh, no.
Oh yes, the idea of batch painting, which we did an episode on, right? And batch painting is one of the killers of this hobby, right? Because you've got your 40, the classic example being the like 50 halberdiers or whatever, right? So the thing about batch painting to me is I think, one, you've got 2 different ways you can approach it. One is you set them all up, and everybody knows, like most people have their batch painting thing down. You pick up a model, you do the 1 step on it, you put it down. You pick up the next model, you do the same step, right? So I'm going to apply all the metal, all the steel, and then I'm going to wash all the steel, and then I'm going to highlight all the steel or whatever, right? So you're going back and forth across the X number of models, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do and you just want to burn through them, cool. If that works for you. I will say that I have found it much more enjoyable recently to do them in smaller groups, like say 5 or 10s or something like that, and push myself or experiment with something weird in a different way on every 10 of them. The minor variation of outcome usually only serves to make whatever you're doing slightly more interesting, right? Because the unit doesn't need to look completely like little clone duplicates. You can have slight variations.
The variation probably aesthetically looks better.
Right, exactly. Like people aren't actually clones running around in your army, right? Like there are going to be variations in things like their armor or their clothing or their skin tone or blah, 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 whatever. Pick any example you want. And so I think breaking them up and playing around with slightly different things. I mean, I'm not saying like you necessarily paint one group with like, you know, bright blue skin and then do Caucasian flesh tone on the next one. Like, okay, that might get weird at some point, depending on what you're doing. If your halberdiers all got touched by Tzeentch, maybe. But that being said, there's still plenty of stuff you can do and or play around with. And I think that turns what could be a rote task you know, into something that still helps you grow and is challenging and keeps it more interesting. That's been my trick lately. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. But there you go. That's my own personal thing. Because I have found I despise mass like batch painting now. I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. I can't do like 50 models in just one step. I have lost that ability.
I need to get better at being satisfied with knowing that it's a big unit, right? Like I always start like a batch paint and I'm always like, I'll just add a little more detail on this. Oh, I'll just add a little more detail on this. And you're like, I haven't made any progress on these minis. So it can just quickly add up when you're talking about that many models. You know, if you just start, like you said, it's nice because you can break it up. You can try doing a little extra detail on one given thing on your small amount and then move along, as opposed to doing it on all of them and have it be soul crushing.
Yes, exactly. And you can get to a point where I think one of the things to, you know, you want to avoid, especially if you're trying to do a nice job, is the right color becoming done. Okay. Which is my statement. We've all been there. We've all been working on a mini and you get to the point where the right color is done. I don't give a crap. I don't need to do this next step. I don't need to do another highlight. I don't need to push another shadow. I don't blah, 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 whatever the example is. You want to try to avoid that by keeping things interesting. It's going to happen, and sometimes it is the correct choice. Sometimes it's right to just put down the mini, be happy with it, walk away, and go to the next thing. And that's perfectly fine.
Like I said in the beginning, that expected value always has to be positive. If you were trudging through something, you need to move on.
Right. Yeah. Knowing when to quit certainly has a high amount of value. I think you can avoid the right color becoming done every single time by varying up what you're challenging yourself with. You know what I mean? Because yes, otherwise it can be easy to just get frustrated. So, yeah. All right. Any final thoughts as we close it out here that you want to share with people?
Final thoughts. Have fun. Paint something. Join the PMP. Show me what you got. Show me what you've got.
I love it. I'm going to link Paul's channel down below. He's going to be producing tons of great content. You see what I'm putting him on the hook for? He just recently released some new videos that he was. And so I want to thank Paul for coming back and doing our first completely hobby focused show. I really appreciate it, man. And we're going to talk about restarting maybe a new excellent hobby adventure. We'll see what we can do. And
could be fun. Could be fun.
Absolutely. And of course, oh, there was a little question. When it comes to basing, what is the best approach to red figures? Oh, that's a fun question. Do you want to answer a question before we call it?
Yeah, let's
red
answer
figures.
I'm not sure. I feel like I need more context here. I like some context with my base. So we just have a red figure. Is that what we're working off of?
Sure. Let's assume we're talking about like, let's say like an Adeptus Mechanicus guy, right? Where they're in true Mars colors, but maybe he's not on Mars, where he's mostly red. Or perhaps you got a big red demon, like a Bloodthirster. There you go. Something like that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could take a lot of approaches to this. You could sort of tie in the color of the theme into the base. So you could keep it warm. You could do your lava tones. You could do things like that. You could make it more natural, which I think might be kind of weird in this situation. If you're more earthy and stuff like that with a red model, it may or may not make it pop. And then the other thing I like to do that I've liked ever since our hobby adventure is sort of contrasting with the model. So if you got a big red bright guy, maybe do some cool tones on the base. Maybe make sure it kind of contrasts a little bit to make that model pop and also make the base a little bit different so you're not overloaded on that situation.
Yeah, I think for me, the answer is avoid bright green grass. Like I know red and green are complementary colors, but I find that if you just have green on the base and you just have red on the miniature, it ends up causing such a separation, right? That like it's hard to, it becomes so starkly contrasting. It's too much. Mm-hmm. But that being said, a little bit of coolness on the base, I totally agree with that, right? Like getting some of those cool gray tones, maybe work a little blue into your stone down there, yeah, you know, cool. Have a little, what I like to do personally is like have some warm gray stone. So like brown gray, but then I work in some cool gray, like cool blue touches into stone, either through pigment or thin glazes, and then scatter around a little like iron oxide pigment in some other places to kind of then bring the red down into the base. And red and blue work really well on stone. That
Mhm.
looks right to our eye because we're used to like iron oxide and we're used to stone sort of having kind of the blue tone of blue light from the sky reflected on it. So it doesn't register as unusual to your eye when there's blue tones in stone.
I was
Having
looking at natural pictures, as you're kind of saying. It
yeah,
tends to aesthetically be pleasing to our eye when you can find. You just go on Google, and it doesn't really matter where it is. A lot of times, if you're doing like coral reefs and stuff, they have a lot of bright colors. But if you can get those colors sort of somewhere in nature, it usually tends that they sort of look appropriate in that
right.
situation.
Yeah, I like a little bit of green. Like if you can scatter around a few, maybe like subdued green plants, right? So if we're not so not bright green spring grass, but maybe like these are one of my favorite little basing flocky things. These little like I don't know what these are. I don't know if they come from like I don't know if these come from Army Paint or who they come from, but I really like them. They're kind of like a muted green. And then I hit them with a little wash. Drop a little like Agrax in there or a Athonian Camo Shade to subdue them more. Just a couple of those around, and then if you can work like some green or something up into the miniature in a little way, again in a very like muted, desaturated green, find that can cause it, that can tie it together nicely. I like that. There you go. So yeah, that's my answer. All right, cool, good final question. So what I'll say is we're gonna do some more hobby shows in the future. I want to bring on more people, talk to them about the hobby, about their journey, and that kind of stuff. I'm thrilled to have Paul on for the first one. As usual, we thank all of you for watching. It is deeply appreciated. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.